Welcome back to Mac Stories Unwind. Today's show is brought to you by Collide. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Doing really well today. We're in the midst of a big Club Mac Stories membership event that we're doing all the way until the end of October. And if you haven't already heard me or Federico talking about this, you ought to go check out the links in the show notes, because I'll put a link to where the announcement post that really has all the details. But we're doing all sorts of special stuff for existing club members on the website and in the newsletters and with the town hall and a bunch of other things on Discord. And we're also offering all annual club memberships for 20% off through October 31st. This is really the first time ever that we've discounted club membership. So this is the time to grab it, because who knows if and when or ever they're coming back.
I know. It's first time ever we're doing it, so better take advantage of the discount while it's still ongoing. And yeah, you got a couple of weeks until the end of October.
Yeah, we're doing a bunch of giveaways too in the club Discord for Club Mac Stories Plus and Premier members. And those giveaways are going to be open all the way until the end of October. So even if you didn't join before, the first of those giveaways, you can still join now. Go in Discord and sign up, and maybe you'll win one of the apps. Go in there. We'll have a bunch of those throughout the next couple of weeks till the 31st. And then I'll be sending out, winner emails, which is something that I like to do.
Yeah.
Always nice to be able to give people good news by email instead of spamming them with junk.
I know.
All right, Federico. Well, for today's Unplugged segment, I have a question for you. And this question started as, if there was one person you could interview, who would it be and why? But I don't want to hear Steve Jobs. I don't want to hear Tim Cook. I don't want to hear some politician. I decided, name one person in a creative field that is not tech that you would like to interview, and why? Who would that be, Federico?
Does video game industry count as tech?
No, we will exclude video games from this.
Then I would say Shigeru Miyamoto.
Oh, that is a very good pick.
Yeah, I would love to interview Miyamoto-san and ask him all sorts of questions, mostly about the idea of ensuring that a product is good, and even when that means shipping a product later than you were originally expecting. I would ask him about just how he collected ideas and where he found inspiration through the course of multiple decades, and sort of while staying true to a certain vision regarding design, regarding quality, regarding polish. I do believe that Shigeru Miyamoto is one of the most creative people out there. Perhaps Hideo Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli would also count in here. Just like these figures that have consistently throughout their careers put out masterpiece after masterpiece. And how do you manage expectations? How do you manage your own creativity? How do you manage your work-life balance? Especially because if you put your name on something, if you put your signature on something, then you have all these expectations from other people. So how to manage that and how to deal with a structure underneath you, right? Miyamoto is now delegating most of the work to other creatives inside the Nintendo. So what was that transition like? Going from a leading production role to a sort of overseeing other people's work is also something that I'm interested in. So yeah, that would be the person I would love to interview.
Yeah, I think he really would be fascinating. He's had such a long and storied career for so many decades now. And one of the things I'd find really interesting in hearing more from him about is where some of the ideas come from. And also, how has the process changed over the years? Because obviously the video game industry today is very different than it was 20, 30 years ago. And how has that impacted kind of his creative process and his thinking about the characters and the stories that he's trying to tell?
Exactly.
Very good pick. So what
about you? Yeah.
Yes, my pick would be Phoebe Bridgers. It really would.
Okay.
That's not probably very surprising. I guess Shigeru Miyamoto isn't very surprising for you either. But I think that Phoebe Bridgers is one of the most interesting and inspiring singer-songwriters that we have out there today. I mean, I put her up against really anybody in the music industry. And I think that her prowess, I guess, as a songwriter is really demonstrated by the wide and varied people she's collaborated with, who are some of the biggest names in the music industry. And she's only 28, so they're very different stage in her life than, say, Miyamoto is, but has already accomplished quite a bit, but doesn't have that many full-length albums under her belt yet. And I would wonder, one of the things I would like to understand is like, what kind of pressure does that put on her as someone who's as young as she is, having been so successful with the first two albums, plus the Boy Genius collaborative EP and album. And also, very much like I would ask Miyamoto, what is her creative process like? What is it that inspires her? What in her past growing up led her into a songwriting career and to become a musician as well? And get a better feel for kind of what that process is. I find songwriting to me is a very mysterious and very interesting process. I mean, we got a chance to interview for Dialogue now, like a few years ago now, Frank Turner, and he talked a lot about how he comes up with his songs. I would be interested to hear about what Phoebe Bridgers does herself for that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a very good pick, and I'm not surprised.
This episode of Mac Stories Unwind is brought to you by Collide. If you work in security or IT and your company has Okta, this message is for you. Have you ever noticed that for the last few years, the majority of data breaches and hacks that you read about have something in common? It's employees. Hackers absolutely love exploiting vulnerable employee devices and credentials. But it doesn't have to be that way. Imagine a world where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. In this world, phished credentials are useless to hackers, and you can manage every OS, even Linux, from a single dashboard. Best of all, you can get employees to fix their own device security issues without creating more work for IT. The good news is that you don't have to imagine this world. You can just start using Collide. Collide is the device trust solution for companies that use Okta, and it ensures that if your device isn't trusted and secured, it can't log onto your cloud apps. Visit collide.com/MacStoriesUnwind to watch a demo and see how it works. That's KOLIDE.com/MacStoriesUnwind. Our thanks to Collide for their support of the show.
All right. There's also a follow-up question.
There is. The question is, if you could play video games from only one console maker, which would it be?
I mean, so there's an honest question, there's an honest answer, and there's a sort of a clever answer.
Yes. Well, I was trying to work my way around clever answers here by limiting it to console makers as opposed to systems it is. There's a lot of ways you can kind of work your way around this, I suppose.
I mean, the clever answer would be a PC, so that through Steam and emulators, I can play any games I want.
Right, and that's not what I mean.
But the honest answer, I mean, obviously, I would play Nintendo games forever. I would just go with consoles by Nintendo, games by Nintendo for the rest of my life, and I would be fine. Because I do mostly play Nintendo games. I mean, if you look at through my entire life, I started playing video games when I was 4 or 5 with my Super Nintendo. And through the course of my life, I've always been more in tune with Nintendo games. Sure, I've always owned, PlayStations, Xboxes, PC now, but I've always been a Nintendo boy at heart. I mean, let's face it, I could just easily get by with stuff by Nintendo for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And, I would probably play some remakes over and over because Nintendo does love to put out the same game over and over through the years.
Yes, true.
But I'll probably play Super Mario World for like the 20th time at some point. But yeah, the honest answer would be Nintendo.
Well, the answer for me is the same too. And what really got me thinking about this is the simultaneous release of Super Mario Brothers Wonder and Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5. That was part of it. The other part was the news that that Analog is coming out with a Nintendo 64 system sometime in 2024. And it got me thinking about, well, if all I could do is play these new games that Nintendo is issuing on the Switch, as well as go back and play the classics using things like Analog's hardware, I'd be perfectly content. It's not to say I don't like playing games on my Xbox and PS5 a lot, but if I had to choose just one, I think I'd be perfectly content just limiting myself to Nintendo.
Yeah. And I'm convinced this is the right answer because of the sheer joy and delight and variety that Nintendo games bring.
Right.
Speaking of games, let me share my pick for this week's episode of Unwind. So this is not a Nintendo game. And by the way, to follow up to your point, in between Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I'm also going to play Super Mario before Spider-Man, given that Spider-Man seems to be more of the same from the previous game, whereas Mario Wonder looks like something completely new and weird and so incredible. So I'm going with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do too.
Yeah. So my game this week, something that I've been playing for the past couple of weeks on and off, and I'm almost finished. I think I'm approaching the final stages, is a puzzle game called Cocoon. So this game came out of nowhere. I think it was mentioned in passing in the Besties podcast that some of the Polygon folks do with the McElroy brothers. And so I started playing this game, and I'm not typically huge on puzzle games myself. Like I get bored with puzzle games after a while. But this is so unlike other puzzle games in that it's structured more like an adventure game, in that you are exploring this world and you are a little cute bug. There's no story. There's no explanation as to, like, suddenly you are born out of this cocoon and you just start exploring this weird, sort of creepy world that reminds me a little of Hollow Knight, in that it's this weird world with insects and bugs. It's kind of gross and creepy. It's the puzzle mechanic itself that really got me. So the idea behind Cocoon is that and I'm going to try my best to describe this on a podcast. You are this little bug and you need to go through these multiple worlds connected by an overworld sort of hub, like central hub. And you carry around these sort of magical spheres that you need to place on specific pedestals. And when you place one of these spheres on these pedestals, you can sort of step into a world contained within the sphere itself. So, for example, if you carry around the orange sphere, you enter this world that is like orange tinted. There's like a desert. If you carry around the green sphere, you enter this like forest themed, sort of like actually in a swamp themed world. And all these spheres contain a world. And at some point, you unlock the ability to travel inside a sphere while carrying another sphere. So you reach this point that feels like, sort of like a Russian doll mechanic, where you have a world within a world within a world, which is very tricky to explain. But you basically end up, without spoiling too much of the game, there are boss fights that also involve understanding the game's mechanic. And all the puzzles are structured and sort of are designed around this idea of juggling these multiple spheres that you carry around. There are some power-ups that are associated with each of these spheres. And it becomes this intricate and delightful but never too difficult so that you get stuck. You get stuck for like 20 minutes and then the solution always comes to you. And it's a genius piece of game design in that the game constantly challenges you to think about like, okay, I need to carry the orange sphere and then I need to travel inside the green sphere because the orange sphere need to go on that pedestal. But then you unlock the purple sphere. And so you have all these multiple layers, like it's a layer within a layer within a layer. It's like an onion, basically. And it's very brainy, but not too much so that it makes you feel stupid if you don't get it. The game walks a very delicate balance between a complex mechanic and rewarding the player as you go, which is a very tricky thing to do for a puzzle game. And the game's pretty short. Like, it's gonna take 4 or 5 hours of your time. It's not a huge commitment. It's not something that, I can see myself. Well, there is maybe some replayability involved if you want to collect some special artifacts that are scattered throughout the game. But knowing myself, I think this is a game that I'll just play once to get through all the main puzzles and be done with it. And I'm having a very enjoyable time with it. I'm playing on my ROG Ally. It's very nice looking. And yeah, the best part is that these puzzles, they sort of break your brain in a good way. They make you think about all these sort of worlds within worlds within worlds, which sounds complex on a show, on a podcast, but in practice, you're going to get the gist of it pretty quickly. And it's totally unlike anything else you've ever played.
That sounds really good. I mean, this is a game that I've been meaning to pick up ever since you recommended it to me, and I haven't yet. And I probably will get to it eventually. I think you're right. It is very hard for a puzzle game to walk that sort of line to both keep your interest, but not let you get stuck in such a way that it is either too frustrating or makes you feel dumb. And sounds like they've really hit the nail on the head with that one. Sounds great. It's available on a bunch of different systems too, I think, right?
It's everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, my pick today is Lessons in Chemistry on Apple TV Plus. Okay. This is a brand new show starring Brie Larson. And Brie Larson plays Elizabeth Zott, who's a chemistry genius, and she's battling sexism in the 1950s, the late 1950s. This is a show that's based on a book. It was a bestseller by Bonnie Garmus, and not a novel that I was familiar with, but was very, very popular and adapted into this TV show. Now, apparently, I don't know anything about the book other than having read a few reviews of the show. Apparently in the book, there's a dog that talks to Elizabeth Zott a lot, which is not really in the show, or maybe is not in the show a lot. And there's a lot of humor in the book that is maybe toned down a little bit in the TV show based on what I saw from these reviews. It's only been out. It's an 8-episode show that's only got 2 episodes out so far. So I've only watched 2, but unlike a lot of shows that I've watched recently in the last year or so on TV Plus, where sometimes the first couple of episodes don't really grab me, and it really isn't until maybe 3 or 4 in that I really get hooked on something. This show really did hook me from the get-go because it's a very interesting period piece set in the 50s. I think Brie Larson does an amazing job portraying Elizabeth Zott, who's this quiet but determined and rebellious woman who is obviously very, very smart, but held back by the sexism of the 50s. And part of it is a love story. She falls for a guy who's also a chemist, and they hit it off. And then there's a twist related to him. Part of it is like a little bit like Mad Men, which is one of the reasons I texted you about it last weekend and said, you guys really ought to watch this because I think you'll really like it. Now, Elizabeth Zott, though, in this show starts as a chemist in a corporation doing various experiments, but she ends up, and this is kind of the arc of the story arc of the entire season, she ends up being a TV star doing a cooking show called Supper at 6, where she shows people how to make all sorts of dishes based on whatever they have available at home. Because in her spare time as a chemist, she was applying her chemist techniques to cooking and became a really good cook. And so the artifice of this show is she's, kind of teaching housewives how to make macaroni and cheese and other things for their families. But what she's really doing is she's teaching them chemistry, and she's also there's this like subversive undertone to it too, where she's also sending these messages to these women about their lives and how they can do more than just be housewives at home in the 50s. And so it's it's like an empowerment message coming from her through this cooking show, which is really an interesting concept to me. And so, as I said, it's only been on two episodes dropped at the same time last Friday. It comes out every Friday. And I literally can't wait to see the next one on Friday, because this is one of those shows where we got through the first two episodes and thought, oh, that's all there is, because it's now we've got to, wait another week to watch it again. But it's really good. And now I probably won't read the book, but if you watch it and like it, check out the book too. I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. But yeah, this is a really fun show.
All right.
All right, Federico, that's it for this week. I want to thank our sponsor for this episode. That's Collide. And, be sure to check out Club Mac Stories and get in on those deals, 20% off until the end of the month for any annual plan. We'll be back next week with another episode. You can find both of us at macstories.net. Federico and I are both on Instagram too. Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.